I'm speaking to Carol Gobey again today. Carol has been, well, if you have a look at the previous interview that we did, if you haven't already, if you don't know Carol's story, but Carol lost her children to their paedophile father in spite of all the evidence. It's the same script throughout the world. And Carol has done so much investigation since losing her children to losing custody of her children. She's created a website. You must go to it. It's extensive. Her research has done is very extensive. She's written a book. There's so much information and there's so much eye-opening information. So I'll put that in the link in the description anyway. But it's called isthislovebook.com. So Carol, can you just kind of summarize what this website's about and, you know, some of the research that you've done and what you've found, and then we'll get on to some of the research itself.
Sure. I wrote the book initially for many reasons, because I felt silenced in Luxembourg after my children were given to my ex. Also to expose what's happening. And then I realized that there are many other people who are also dealing with this. Actually, very coincidentally, a few weeks after my children were taken away, I bumped into a couple from my native country, on a tour. And they asked me what I was doing, and I said, you know, I used to be a mother and a housewife, but I got fired because I reported child sex abuse. And she said to me, my niece is in the exact same position. Her son reported, 3 years old, disclosed that he was being sexually abused by his father. The father's uncle is a judge, and she said her niece has been struggling for 5 years to get custody of her child or to protect her child. And I realized, you know, I'm obviously not the only one. And so I started searching and I got more cases, but at that point I wrote my account down. And then I thought, you know, the public needs to have a clearer view of what is going on in these systems, in this child protection system, because they hear of isolated cases. You know, and it does not have the impact when you see the mass amount of victims of the system and child victims, children who are screaming and crying to be heard, and they're ignored. They're forced to live with their abusers or to go on unsupervised visitations with their abusers by the family court.
Yeah, it seems to be a worldwide script. So from the research that you've done, Carol, would you say that this is happening throughout the world in most westernized countries?
Yes, definitely. I mean, there's people who had written books about this. You know, it's as if they follow a strategy, and it started with a guy called Dr. Richard Gardner. You know, he invented that parental alienation theory, and he basically, I'm going to say, messed up child protection, because that's literally what he did. And he was an insane person who talked about pedophilia as an ancient tradition, and that a parent having sexual attraction for their children is normal, and the parent who does not agree with this is causing the harm to the child. I mean, his theories are absolutely insane and 100% pedophilia. But this, for some reason, he was considered an expert in the law system of family law. I mean, and it's mind-blowing. I mean, it's as if there's no morals or no values, no ethics, no integrity, no respect for children. Yeah. It's all about, you know, sex. Sorry, I put this right. But anyway, there are many people who's written, you know, a lot of books about it. And in part 4 of the book, Is This Love, A Mother's Plea, part 4 is where the research starts. And in edition 14, there's quite a lot of cases, as well as a sort of a general idea, who's fighting for it, what has been done, books have been written, movies have been made.
Yeah.
You try and expose this. What doesn't kill me is that's the name of the film. What doesn't kill me?
Yeah.
Plays are performed in theaters to try and explain what is going on. There's a book, From Madness to Mutiny. It's why mothers are running away from the family court. And then of course you have in the politicians, just to give an idea, I mean, that the victims of this have been trying to expose and fight this for decades. This is not something new. I mean, there's people who, I know, who lost their children in 2000 already, and they haven't seen their children since, after reporting, child sex abuse, or their children having disclosed child sex abuse. And it generally follows a pattern. So one of the books, I'm just going to show you here, you can put the link in there. One of the books is a book written by teacher Catherine Mullen in 2014. It's When His Eyes Turned White is the title. And I'm just going to run through the points. Like it describes a systematic, how the parent, who raises concern about possible sexual abuse of a child is systematically silenced and accused and attacked.
Absolutely. Do you want me to read through these points? I've just got them up, Carol.
Points you go through them. It is their reputation or destroyed.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people may identify or will identify with this. And for those who don't know about it, this, I can say myself, this is what happens. So as Carol said, this is the book When His Eyes Turn White by teacher Catherine Mullen, 2014. So this is the method. This is parents who raise concerns about possible sexual abuse by the other parent is systematically silenced and accused. So the method is succinctly described. So here is the 8-point method. Number 1, child discloses abuse, usually sexual abuse. Law enforcement does substandard investigation, says there is not enough evidence to give to DA, and closes the case. Child Protective Services does a substandard investigation, labels it unsubstantiated, and shunts it into family court as a custody case. 2, the family court judge appoints inside a children's attorney and a psychologist to shift blame to mostly the mother by fraudulently reporting that she's a liar, alienator, and or mentally ill, and recommend custody to mostly the father, who they opine is the friendly parent. 3, judge minimises, disregards and conceals evidence of abuse, finds mostly the mother to be lying, alienating or mentally ill, and gives custody to the abusive parent. 4, judge isolates children from the mother and anyone who might support the truth about the abuse, while children are Stockholmed and brainwashed by the abuser. A reunification, deprogramming therapist, or an out of state camp in forgetting about or recanting the abuse and agreeing to live with the abusive parent. 5, judge places mother on supervised visitation where neither she nor the children are allowed to speak of abuse past or present. Supervision monitors report to the court if either speaks of the abuse and ends the visit if they do. 6, judges make orders that prohibit children from seeing professionals who may support their disclosures, prohibits mother from taking children to doctors or therapists, and gives the perpetrator control over who they see. Judge gag orders the mother so the public cannot hear about the abuse or the cover-up of the abuse, and threatens that she will not see her children again if she does not remain silent and go along with the cover-up. 8, judge disempowers the mother by bankrupting her through the legal process, traumatizing her through separation from her children, and enabling the abuse to continue. So there we have it. Very well put. I can identify with every single point on there, as I'm sure you can, Carol.
Yes,
I'm sure many parents can do as well. It's mainly women who it happens to, but I know some men as well. So we just want to say that as well. But
we know some men as well, and there's some men in this case study as well on the parent situation. Just something I want to add. They recommend custody to mostly the father, who they opine as the friendly parent. They opine that parent as the safe parent as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because now they're saying you're a danger to your children. So they, the friendly and the safe parent, they create that image of the parent.
Absolutely. You can have your the abuser parent sat there. Just, it's like almost like they don't even have to try. They don't even have to try, and
to do. Yeah, they just have to sit there and smile or whatever.
Exactly. Just like say, no, I didn't do it. That's it. That's all they have to say.
Act like a victim. Yeah. Act like a victim. I'm going to go through a few of the cases just so that people listening can get an idea.
That'd be
overview of just a few cases. And these are all cases where people had actually gone public or had agreed to give information. Just to say that, and have been public on other sites, so the information is public knowledge. There's a case that's I don't know if you know Geertje Franken.
Yes.
No, her case. Her case. She put up quite a fight. Her daughter was 10 years old. She disclosed sexual abuse by the father. They were at that point in the Netherlands. A verified child welfare institution confirmed that this child had been severely, abused, neglected, sexually abused. The father admitted he was a drug addict to cocaine and heroin. He had 2 psychiatric illnesses, narcissistic and something else. When this child disclosed, Geertje actually tried to protect her child. She went to the Hague Court because he then wanted, he was from the USA, and he then wanted the child in the USA. She tried to keep the child protected, and he was demanding, that she was interfering with his custody, and she also attempted to run to protect her child, and she was running for 8 months. And when she returned, this was after the Hague Convention case, which she lost, which they were basically ignoring. And this is usually what they do. They just ignore all sex abuse mentioned, any evidence, any indication of the child, being traumatized. They just simply ignore it. When she came back a few days after they got back, a SWAT team stopped her and her daughter on the way to school, jumped out of a car with black windows in their gear and their guns, dragged her child out of the car, threw her into the car. The child apparently threw up and was screaming hysterically, and drove her to the airport to give her to this drug addict and mentally unstable person who she had said is sexually abusing her. And after that, Geertje, she was thrown in jail. They took her and threw her in jail, so she couldn't do anything immediately. No grounds, they just threw her in jail. And she eventually got Skype contact once a week, an hour with her child, while she had to be supervised because she's very dangerous, according to the law system. And that was stopped in 2015. In 2015, she lost contact with her child. She started also doing interviews with parents who go through the same situation, and it's called Hell is for Children with Geertje Franken, and that's Frenken. And she's interviewed quite a few mothers on that, in similar situations. There are many other cases. There's another case, interesting case, Nashwa Holt. She's a Harvard-educated physician. She had twins with a colonel in the Air Force in the USA, and they got divorced. They got divorced early on, and the children started disclosing all types of abuse by the age of 3, describing penetrative penile penetration, digital penetration, all kinds of damage to their bodies. And she tried to protect her children, and she couldn't. She lost custody of them when they were 6 to this man. There's medical reports, there's pictures, there's and this guy also had, he was in an explosion. He did trips to Afghanistan, and he was in an explosion. So he also had mental illness as a result of that. She said he was abusive before, but he became even worse after this incident. And he got full custody. She had to, he never paid custody while she had custody of the children. And when he got custody, that's the other thing they do to these mothers. They double the maintenance of the children. So she had to pay this guy $5,600 a month in maintenance. He didn't pay a cent. Yeah. And they canceled all his, the back pay maintenance that he owed her. And she actually committed suicide 6 months after her children were given to this guy. She also had supervised visitation, and she said she left a note saying she cannot live in a world where she cannot protect her children.
Absolutely devastating. Absolutely, it's just right in the words. It's just shocking. Oh, there are so many of these cases, aren't there, as well, Carol? So many. Cases where children have died. Thomas Valver, his father is awaiting trial, and his father's girlfriend, and obviously I've done videos on that. But obviously there's the case of Kara Witowski. Is it Witowski?
Yeah, Witowski. James Beale is her son's name. Shall I give some details on that?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. She her daughter started disclosing sexual abuse and other abuse by the it's by the father and the grandfather, but in the house they were all living in the same house, and still. And her son was at that stage age one, and the police refused to do anything. At that stage he had also raped her, and they also ignored that. Even in a message he admits to her that he had raped her, and they just ignored it. And her children were given into his custody, both of them, and the child had something like 7 anal relapse episodes where it's when the anus pulls apart on the inside, it pulls out, the connections pulls out on the inside. I'm not a medical person, but anyway, it's basically when the anus is turned upside down.
Right, yeah. And prolapse, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah, prolapse, yeah. And he had 7 episodes, and by October, was it 2018 or 2019, this child was actually had the size of an orange on his backside, and it was so severe that they could not do any operations on him, and they were saying the child's going to die. Now, Kara she was not allowed to see her children at all. She had no idea. And when the child died a month later, they didn't even notify her. She wasn't at the funeral, as far as I can remember, she said. It's just horrendous. And then it's the Palatine police station in the US. I don't know where, I think it's New York area. And she, 2 days or something after the child had died, they were, sort of advertising that it was, they don't know the cause, blah, blah, blah. It's nothing criminal, etc. And And the coroner, there wasn't even an investigation on the child's death yet. The coroner haven't looked at the body yet, but they were already advertising this.
It's a harrowing case, and it's to think that this man is still free. The grandfather is still free. The little girl disclosed. I know I've read from Kara's Facebook that her daughter disclosed on the night that he, well, I want to use a different word than died, obviously, but she actually disclosed that the grandfather puts a toothbrush up the little boy's anus.
Yeah, and he was screaming, apparently.
Yeah, and he was screaming, yeah.
And she tried to take him away from the grandfather, and he pushed her over. And he also wanted her to pull the toothbrush out of him. It's disgusting. It's just disgusting. I mean, it's a 5-year-old who has to say this. I mean, there is no way, a child, and they were accusing Cara before this of being, everything, the coaching, the lying, unstable, everything.
Yeah.
And then when her child died, then after the child dies, they give her 50% custody of her daughter. So now she has to co-parent. She accepted it. I mean, what is she supposed to do?
Exactly.
She has no choice. She sits in the situation, at least now, but all of a sudden she can now have custody, of her daughter after and that's with Justina Volva. It was the exact same with Justina Volva. After they tortured this child to death, after his father and the girlfriend, Angelina something, they tortured this child to death in a garage. After this, they say before that, they were just ruining her, in every way they could possibly do it. And after the child's death, they say, oh, yes, the full custody of your other children.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's with
now you're not mentally unstable anymore. Oh, hold on,
Honestly, yeah, honestly.
And then, sorry, Samantha, and then they run around and they go, oh, we've made a mistake. Let's do an investigation and see where our mistake was.
Absolute rubbish. They don't need to do any investigation. It's clear that these mistakes, they shouldn't be happening altogether. If CPS, if family court, if the police, mainly it falls with the family court with a lot of our situations, because we know with the police they have to have a certain balance, a certain standard of proof, but the family court, then they should be the ones to protect the children. And obviously very few deaths should then be happening, but the fact is that they're happening all the time with these private law cases and public law. But it's almost like it's not a system infiltrated by corruption and paedophilia and child trafficking, whatever you want to call it. It's almost like it was designed that way, for it to be happening on such a extensive level. Almost like it's a script that if you go to family court with especially child sex abuse allegations against a father, then you've lost your child. It's a script, and it's not the other way around. It's not like, but because it's so secret, we're not warned about it. Whilst there's obviously, we're desperately trying to get the truth out there with our little platforms and with the social media and what we can do, and writing books and websites and there's movies out, but when something's not reported on in the mainstream media, how are we going to warn others? And unless they see our efforts, how are we going to warn other people about that? Because even when you read about Justina Balva's case with Thomas Balva, all the detail isn't there. You have to really research it, and it was satanic ritual abuse as well, and all of that was covered up, and there's no investigation into that. Nothing.
Still ignoring it. They're still ignoring it after that child died so horrendously. Yeah. And you know what? In the 2 years he had custody of the children, the teachers reported those children 17 times to child protection. 17 times.
Yeah. They don't care. They are child abuse supporters and enablers. No,
it is strange beyond, and nobody can say, oh, hold on, they need a little bit more education.
No, it's nothing to do with training. And I know you didn't watch the Dispatches programme the other night from England called Torn Apart, but we've got Judge Mumby on there, who was the ex-head of the family division up until a few years ago. He's saying about training. But as Megan Fox, who's an investigative journalist in America, she pointed out on Twitter, isn't that why you go to law school, to get training on domestic abuse and child sex abuse? What is the training used for if it's not for that?
I'll tell you what the training is used for in the law training. I've heard from various sources that they are taught that when a mother reports child sex abuse, she is most likely a bitch who's vindictive and vexatious and is trying to get full custody of the children. Yeah. And this is what is imprinted in their heads during their training.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you now that there's a reason why that is done. And I mean, if they are so narrow-minded that they cannot understand that experts are saying 2 to 4% of cases are false accusations, but that the rest has valid, it's most likely true and real, and that the child is in danger, but they dismiss over 90% of cases.
Exactly.
And it's one case after the other. I mean, I can just go through this. There's Molly Baker in Canada.
Yeah.
You know her? Yeah, she had an interview with on YouTube, unlawful seizure. Where do you turn when everyone is in on it? She lived in a small town, and her children started disclosing at the age of her daughter. Her eldest daughter disclosed at the age of 4, and her children were given to the abuser.
Yeah.
She sees her children under supervision with a social service worker and a sheriff.
Staggering.
I think 2 hours a week. 2 hours a week. That's that one. Yeah, there's another mother. This mother is in Argentina, Gilda Morales. She cycled, her child disclosed sex abuse. I'm going to see what the age was. Sorry, I made a few notes here.
Yeah.
To many professionals. He disclosed bravely to many professionals that his father was sexually molesting him, and they gave him custody. And she actually tried to protect her child by not allowing the visitations. And then they obviously do she's parental alienating, etc. And then they give her full custody. It's like a trap, that is set. And she cycled 400 miles to draw the public's attention. She did a hunger strike for 19 days in front of the family court house, and eventually her supporters got violent, and she managed with that to get into the Supreme Court, and they then gave her, custody of her children and protected the child. After that, after all that effort, and after all, creating that, that's how she manages to protect her children.
Wow, gosh, it's
I mean, it's
other after the other. I mean, there's lots of cases here in England.
In and out of jail, I think 4 times for things like giving her daughter a letter, sneaking a letter to her daughter, dropping off Christmas presents for her children. I can't remember. Anything she reports on Facebook, it is monitored, and if she just mentions anything, she's in violation of that indefinite restraining order. There's not an ounce of any criminal case against her, simply because her daughter disclosed sexual abuse by the father.
Yeah, and the father has even won custody of her son. I know her son's now an adult, but she's obviously brainwashed against his mother now. That is proper parental alienation.
It's not his father. It's
exactly.
not even.
It's not. It's and then
there's not his biological.
Sorry. And then there's a case that I was reading about on your blog about the I don't know which country it was in. Was it in Australia? A man with AIDS and 2 previous child sex abuse convictions, won custody of his daughter? Is it one child?
Yeah. It's actually a video. It's a video.
Convictions of child rape doesn't prevent family court for giving custody of their own children, even though they're proven beyond all reasonable doubt to be a danger.
On the contrary, it makes the court more vigorous to make sure they get their rights. So they are vigorously out to make sure this person is. Lisa Knight is another example. Do you know her?
No.
She's in America. Her 6-year-old girl was given to a registered pedophile, convicted pedophile father. What happened is he was convicted he went to jail for 6 years for sexually molesting his a 6-year-old daughter from another mother, and he came out of jail, and the first thing he did was, wanting visitation with her 6-year-old, and certain things happened, like he would have her in the bed and all kinds of things. As this was a convicted pedophile, he just came out of jail. And they were just forcing her to allow her daughter to go to this place unsupervised. Apparently, she was starting to say that his son, who was also was starting also to molest her, and she lost custody. She complained, to the court that he was sleeping in the same bed with his daughter with only his underwear on, and things like, and they couldn't be bothered. Can't be bothered.
They're just like, well, what's wrong with that? They're just like,
That's not
like,
evidence.
great.
I mean, why can't a pedophile lie in bed with his daughter? I mean, what's wrong with that? And yeah, so they gave him full custody, and immediately he left the jurisdiction. I mean, that was immediate. He left the jurisdiction. This is something they also do. He left the jurisdiction. Police actually pulled him off along the road because he was not allowed to be near children. This was part of his conviction. And they said to him, why do you have a little girl in the car with you? And he said, I just got custody in the family court of my daughter. And they said, okay, there you go.
Yeah, so if it's your daughter, you've got rights to that. So yeah, that's the message with the family court, isn't it?
It's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. I mean, she's been fighting so hard to try and protect her daughter. She only sees it during holidays. She can see it for a few weeks during holidays. Like, and he has had 3 DUIs. A friend, a childhood friend of his, they've been friends since 8 years old, apparently, witnessed him sexually molesting her. He reported to the police. Nothing happened. They have taken her away from him 2 or 3 times, but every time they just return the child to him.
Staggering. I mean, what kind of message does that send out? People, anybody watching this who hasn't had children will probably be terrified to have children. You know, if you really educate yourself and think how many of these people there are around. I don't know the statistics, but I think it's more than we can imagine. It just puts you off having children. You just think, well, I can't protect them. So, and it's just the thought of, you know, before all of this happened. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been arrested because of this, but I've been arrested, as you know. It's you wouldn't think it in a million years if someone told you, oh yeah, you're going to be arrested a few times in a few years for protecting your children for nothing. You wouldn't believe it until it happens, would you? You just think, no, that must be rare. What are you talking about?
Yeah. If someone told me this before, I would have said, oh, wow, hold on, I need evidence, you know.
And it's how they can criminalise us with no beyond all reasonable doubt convictions, without a charge, nothing, just for protecting our children on a balance of probabilities. How then the family court can order the police to get involved to enforce their, you know, their actions. And I don't know what to say. There are no words about this system, and I think all we can do at the moment is expose it. And if you could change, like, say, from a legislation point of view, if there was anything within the legislation for family court that could be changed, what would you do if you could change something or some of the legislations? What would it be?
Well, I'll tell you, there is one actually, which is bothering me, and it's a European Parliament directive from 2011 /92/EU, and it's on combating sexual abuse and sexual exploitation of children. And they have a long thing where they write, you know, child should be protected, etc., etc. And then they have a point which says, to ensure, I actually made notes. Maybe I should just, this is just sort of taken out the notes to actually explain to people exactly what it means, because it can be very confusing when it's written there. But basically, is they're saying to ensure successful investigations of offences, their initiation should not depend on a report or accusation made by the victim or by his or her representative. So an investigation should not be initiated by a child's testimony or a parent's testimony saying this. So that would not initiate an investigation. And on top of that, there is no investigative procedures. I mean, this is something I discovered, which it blew my mind, because, and you'll find a lot of these cases also, you'll see the parent requested the child be evaluated. It was refused. The parent, if they take the child to the doctor for examination, they're accused of Munchausen by proxy. Yes. What is it? Pronouncing it correctly. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But there is no operational investigative procedures. Their only thing that they have to do is they have to interview the child. And they don't even sometimes do that. Sometimes they refuse to do that. But that is basically it. They only have to interview the child, and then they say, okay, thorough investigation done.
That's it. That's all they have to do.
And they call it a thorough investigation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that would be something I would change in that system, is, a proper investigation procedures. I know it's a difficult scenario. Basically, all the child has is, a small child don't know about DNA and recording their own sex assault. They don't know that.
Set up a hidden camera when you're 2 years old or something. Yeah.
So obviously, all the child has is their voice. So, I mean, that is the only thing that can actually be verified and used. And this just should be done in a proper manner, not in in a quick little 15-minute interview in front of a stranger who they don't know and they report with, and they don't know if they're safe. I mean, the system is not child welfare. So yes, that's something I would change. And also, these judges have too much power. There's one person in front, and that one person has too much power over other people's lives. You don't know who that person is. You don't know what their sexual preferences are. You don't know which clubs they belong to. You know nothing about them.
Exactly.
You don't know if they're mentally stable. Victoria's Hague's judge is mentally unstable. I mean, you know nothing. Yeah,
exactly.
And that should change.
Yeah, and there's so many other things, and we can talk. Yeah, I've got some things based upon what you just said that we can mention in our next chat about this, Carol. I've just made a few notes as you're talking, and I'm like, oh yeah, bring this up in the next chat. But I know you wanted to keep it to half an hour, and we'll do some more of these, Carol, if you're happy to, and we'll just do some have some more of these chats, going through the research. But I think we'll end this here, and we will speak again soon.
Okay, great.